This podcast serves Middle Tennessee every weekday morning, and it's made possible by member support. Learn how you can make a difference at WPLN.org/support.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's September 16th, 2025. 6 years ago today, the Journal of the National Academy of Sciences published a paper that gave a standard PR phrase the academic treatment. Basically, it sought to establish the actual real-world value of public figures offering their thoughts and prayers after tragic events. Researchers asked 400 hurricane survivors to put a dollar amount on how much they would pay for responses from different kinds of people: pastors, friends, religious strangers, or people with no religious beliefs. The study found that many Christians place value on having other people offer prayer, and they'd pay more if that prayer came from a religious leader. But many self-described agnostics or atheists would actually pay others to not pray on their behalf. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. People's impulses after bad things happen can vary widely. What is comforting to one is irritating to another. Some seek refuge in solitude. Others take strength from mass gatherings, etc. And when that bad thing centers around a divisive person, well, tricky doesn't convey the half of it. The killing of hard-right activist Charlie Kirk has created a sort of litmus test. How you react says something about who you really are as a person. At least, that's how many are treating it. Although I suspect what exactly is supposedly being tested would probably vary widely depending on who you ask. Does it show where you stand on the liberal to conservative spectrum? Is it an indication of what you think about free speech? Or just a sign of whether or not you're a good person? And what is the right response anyway? Should we all be feeling and displaying the same emotions? In Franklin, several thousand people filled the public square on Sunday for a vigil. Organizers used the occasion to remember other people lost to political violence, like Minnesota Democrat Melissa Horton. They said that something has to change, that we can't let our country be a place where people are hassled, threatened, and assassinated. But of course, what prompted the event was specifically Charlie Kirk's killing, and there were speeches honoring him as a First Amendment advocate. On the same day, the Tennessee Titans were one of several NFL teams that chose to hold a moment of silence for Kirk before the game. The White House supported that move and issued a press release praising the teams for doing so. I'm sure many in the stadium were appreciative and glad to give Kirk that honor. But I have personally heard from folks who found it inappropriate. Now, why would they think so? Anytime a life is cut short, it is a tragedy. So what could ever be wrong about honoring the memory of a life at a large community event? Well, one train of thought is that it is particularly inappropriate to do that in Nashville, because this is where the Covenant school shooting happened. The 6 people killed that day were our people. And as the nation grappled with that senseless mass shooting, Charlie Kirk took the moment to say, quote, "I think it's worth it to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational." He said that just days after the Covenant school shooting, and the conversations brought up by that killing are, by all accounts, what he was reacting to when he made that comment. Another point, one that was brought up in a USA Today op-ed by Jarrett Bell, is that the NFL as a whole was an inappropriate venue for honoring Kirk with a moment of silence. Professional football is one of the few spaces in this nation where the majority of the people working there are Black. And Charlie Kirk often chose to engage in rhetoric that was laced with dog whistle racism when it wasn't out and out insulting Black people directly. He said his first thought when he saw a Black pilot was to question their qualifications. He complained about, in his words, quote, moronic Black women in customer service jobs. He called Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, First Lady Michelle Obama, and several other highly educated, highly qualified Black women, quote, affirmative action picks. He insulted Olympic champion Simone Biles, calling her an embarrassment and weak. So, is a venue for so much Black achievement really the best place to honor Kirk? The political assassination of anyone is, of course, a watershed moment and a tragedy, regardless of what that person's politics were. It is unsettling to realize that our society is one where people are sometimes killed for their words, however hurtful their words may have been. But how do we decide which death gets the large-scale public memorials, like stadiums full of people holding silence in the person's honor? Who gets to make that call? And how much grace will people deeply mourning the death of Charlie Kirk give to others who are not celebrating his death, but who don't want to honor his memory either? In just a few minutes, a landfill controversy in rural Scott County. That's coming up after the newscast.
At WPLN, we tell stories about honoring our families.
If he become a monk, that means that mom and dad will go to heaven when they pass away.
And preserving memories.
I never heard of a Rosenwald school. Nobody never told me that's where I went.
I'm Char Daston, and my reporting connects you with your neighbors and the important moments in their lives.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Early voting starts tomorrow for the special primary election to replace Representative Mark Green in Tennessee's 7th Congressional District. It's a crowded field. On the Republican side, there are 11 candidates, most of whom have aligned themselves with President Donald Trump, who has not yet endorsed anyone in the race. On the Democratic side, there are 4 candidates, all of whom are from Nashville. The winner of the primary will face an uphill battle for what has historically been a Republican seat, including since being redrawn to pair a portion of Nashville with a rural area. A few independents have also joined the race, including the first candidate to run under Elon Musk's New America Party. That special primary election day is on Tuesday, October 7th. Tennessee is in the middle of a major economic boom, according to recent data. But a new report has found that many of the state's residents have been left behind. WPLN's Rose Gilbert has the story.
Tennessee's GDP, population, and employment numbers have all increased dramatically over the past decade, which are all signs of a thriving economy. But many families are still struggling to make ends meet, according to research from the nonpartisan group Think Tennessee. Wages have increased in recent years, but the cost of essentials like housing and childcare have increased even faster. And workers in some of the state's largest industries, including education and agriculture, are earning well below the local living wage of about $36 an hour. The report makes several policy recommendations to address these disparities, such as job training for well-paying industries, paid family leave, and affordable childcare. Rose Gilbert, WPLN News.
Over the next decade, Nashville predicts it will need to build 90,000 more housing units to keep up with demand. But right now, the city is not on track to do so. That's why Metro's planning department is introducing zoning changes to boost building. WPLN's Cynthia Abrams reports the department has crafted 4 pieces of legislation for the Metro Council to consider.
One bill would create 2 new zoning districts. These districts would permit slightly higher density housing, not massive apartment complexes, but simply things like quadplexes and courtyard apartments. A different bill would make it easier for 2-family dwellings to be built in places that typically just permit single-family homes. It would also restrict building heights in some neighborhoods. There's also a proposal that makes it easier for homeowners to build garage apartments or in-law units. And finally, Metro is working to enact an incentive program for developers building 5 or more units of attainable housing. Cynthia Abrams, WPLN News.
This week, the council will consider the incentive program bill. The rest of the legislation will be heard in October and November. The housing pods that Metro wants to use as transitional housing for unhoused residents are still not in use. Nashville purchased these shelters during the pandemic to use as a quarantine space. Later, they decided to put them towards becoming tiny homes for unhoused people. But Metro was set back by years of back and forth over the pods' lack of fire safety. Eventually, the city was given permission to proceed as long as the pods were fit with thermal barriers to improve fire resistance. But now, WSMV reports the pods are still being held up, this time for a different reason. In 2024, the city worked out an agreement for nonprofits to place the pods on private property, but none have applied to do so, meaning the shelters remain out of use. Wilson County schools may change start times to address a shortage of bus drivers and getting students to school on time. The times would be staggered depending on the grade levels. Under the new system, school would start between 7:30 and 9:30 a.m., and kids would get dismissed between 2:30 and 4:30 p.m. For example, a first grader would have one start time. A high school student would start later. Bus drivers will be able to handle multiple routes, which many already do. The director of Wilson County Schools says the school board may put together a survey asking parents, students, and staff, including bus drivers, how they feel about the potential change. The Country Music Association Foundation recently honored the nation's top 30 music educators. 10 of those teachers are from Tennessee, and 5 are from Metro Nashville Public Schools. A special moment from the ceremony highlighted 2 instructors, one of whom was a former student of the other, and it showed how music education transcends generations. Several of the honorees spoke about how music can build confidence among students and strengthen communities.
Music is all about connection. And teachers are the ones that give us the key. You teachers in here are the composers of our lives.
I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the music educators that have helped me when I was a child.
The ceremony included live performances, storytelling, and student showcases, including from East Nashville, the Warner Elementary Arts Magnet School Choir. Each honoree received a $5,000 grant. Half of that is meant to enhance their classrooms, and the other half is for personal use. A concert film of the reclusive Nashville indie artist Mitski's most recent tour will play in theaters this fall. It's fitting, since a surprise appearance at the Belcourt Theater was the first public performance of her album, The Land is Inhospitable and So Are We. The tour that followed was unusual. Stark spectacles blurred the lines between pop concert and intimate performance art. Mitski was scheduled to perform at the Ryman twice, but more dates were added after a song from the album went viral, stretching the run to 4 dates. The film, called The Land, will likely come back to the theater where the tour began. That's the Belcourt, next month. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. As Tennessee continues to reckon with a looming landfill shortage, rural communities are being approached by developers seeking to capitalize on the high demand for trash disposal. Some areas have tried to resist, looking to their state and local officials for help. But what happens when elected representatives don't listen? As WUOT's Pierce Gentry reports, traditional grassroots activism might be the answer for Scott County, Tennessee.
In May, developers quietly announced plans to open a landfill on 700 acres of land between the towns of Oneida and Winfield. Quickly, residents began to unite against the proposal. Jennifer Shockley met other people in her community on Facebook, and together they asked their local town, city, and county officials questions. They had little luck.
We realized very early on that our local leaders were failing us. State agencies like TDEC were failing to protect us. We had 2 options. We could either give up or we could fight back. So we decided to fight back for our community.
Last month, residents formed a non-profit environmental coalition, Cumberland Clear, to help with the fight, with Shockley as its secretary. The group is a vehicle for community members to campaign against the landfill and to take legal action for themselves.
It became serious. And we realized that, unfortunately, if we wanted to stop this, us as citizens were going to have to take up the fight.
That's Cody Cox. Together with Lisa Wojcik, he's leading his own group in opposition to the landfill. Instead of taking a legal approach, the 2 live stream government meetings and post public records on Facebook to get as much information out to community members as possible. For weeks now, they've been going door to door in Scott and McCreary counties, gathering signatures on a petition to send to the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. Here's Wojcik.
We have a lot of teeth to this. So it's not just like, here's a bunch of signatures, we oppose this, because they already know that. This has points saying, look at this, look where you erred, look at this law that says you're not doing this the right way, and things like that.
They call their movement the Transparent Bridge Initiative, with the goal of increasing transparency in their local governments and bridging the 2 impacted communities across state lines. But sometimes these grassroots movements haven't been taken seriously at the state level. They've tried reaching out to their state legislators and the governor's office for help. Cumberland Clear President Kathy Obrushansky says they always get the same response.
You need to reach out to your local government. That's the patent answer that we get.
2 weeks ago, State Senator Ken Yeager sent a letter to TDEC asking them not to permit the landfill in Scott County. But activists have had less luck with their House representative or the governor's office. Wojcik and Cox say they spoke with their representative, Kelly Kiesling, by phone. They say Kiesling dismissed their concerns about the landfill development as a local issue and told them that he doesn't get involved in local matters.
And tell me that TDEC, the permit, isn't that a state permit? That's you. You are state. And he was still like, well, now hold on, ma'am, and this and that. I'm like, I don't want to hear hold on, ma'am. I'm like, if you're going to sit here and just tell me it's a local issue and you're not going to help us, then I'm going up the chain. That's just how it's going to be.
Kiesling repeated his position to WUOT News and said that he feels that any letters he sends to TDEC simply would have no impact due to their own sets of rules they have to follow in the permitting process. Cox says that's not an excuse.
If your community supports you backing them, then you don't have nothing to worry about. Because you've been scared out of taking action, then why are you even there?
Cumberland Clear Treasurer Allison Cohen says they won't stop advocating for their community, despite silence from their government.
We're advocating for our neighbors, our residents, our everyone. And we are now asking our local officials to advocate for us. We are very clear on what we want, and we want to be protected. And they at least can't say we didn't know how everybody feels. This is how we feel. This is the result that we're looking for.
Local governments in Scott County have formed a coalition in opposition to the landfill, but have yet to take any public actions to stop its development. In the meantime, activists say it's up to the community groups like Cumberland Clear and Transparent Bridge to lead the fight. For WUOT News, I'm Pierce Gentry in Scott County.
This story was produced as part of the Appalachia Mid-South Newsroom, a collaboration between NPR and several public radio stations in West Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee, including WPLN News. Thanks for listening to the Nash Villager podcast. We take this look at Nashville news every weekday. If you like it, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and tell a friend or give us a mention on your socials. It really helps get the word out. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can become a member at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.